two people can live through the exact same experience, a breakup, a job loss, a childhood wound, and walk away with completely different realities. Why? Because of the story that they tell about it. One person says, I failed, and this proves I'm unlovable. Nothing ever works out for me. Their body floods with cortisol, their muscles tighten, their mind spins in overdrive. And another person would say, well, that was painful. I learned what I don't want, and I now know what I value more clearly. Maybe their shoulders drop, their breath deepens, they move forward with more wisdom. Same event, same raw facts, two entirely different nervous system responses. That is the power of story. And that's why today we're focusing on the how. How do you actually shift a story that's been running on repeat for years? How do you move from the old survival stories into the ones that create safety, resilience, and hope? Welcome to the Building Resilience Podcast, episode 254, How to Shift a Story. Welcome to Building Resilience, a podcast where theory, practical strategies, and inspiring stories show you how to unlock your best life. I'm your host, Leah Davidson. As a certified life coach, speech-language pathologist, and nervous system resilience expert, it is my mission to teach you how to be more resilient to life's adversities. I will show you how to manage your mind, befriend your nervous system, process your emotions, and even eliminate stress. It's time to do more than just survive. It's time to thrive. Let's get started. Hello, everybody. I'm excited to be back with you today. I hope everybody is doing well. I just want to give you a couple of reminders. I want to remind you to check the links in the show notes because I have all sorts of fun stuff for you. I have my free nervous system stress test. I have links to my journals that are available on Amazon. I have some small bundles like my IBS Nervous System Reset Bundle and a new one that's based on my popular workshop. It's not just your thoughts, it's your nervous system with a creative twist. Now, even if you've done the workshop before, I have some fun new bonuses that are included. And of course, you can actually get access to that bundle and the IBS bundle for free if you're a member of the Nervous System Journaling Club. So lots going on, lots of different entry points and ways to work together to help you learn about your nervous system and support your nervous system. Now, last week we explored why stories matter, where they come from, why your brain clings onto them, and how they shape your body state. Today, I'm going to share with you 3 different ways that you can shift a story. Through your lens, how you look at the story, through your language, the words that you use to tell the story, and through your nervous system state. Because you've probably heard me say many times before, I'll use the words that Deb Dana uses, story always follows state. Now, before you get all overwhelmed with everything, you don't need to master all 3 of these things at once. Even just experimenting with just one of these things can start to change how your body, how your mind experience the story that you've been carrying. So the first one we're going to start with is the lens shift. How can we shift your lens? So I want you to imagine your story is like a photograph. Now you can put on 10 different filters on the exact same photo, and each filter will change the mood and the lighting and the meaning and the entire feel of the picture. So stories are the same. There are many different lenses that you can put on a story, and I'm going to share with you 4 of my favorite ones that can transform the way you actually tell the story. So the first one is what we'll call the compassionate lens. So this one is good because it softens the self-criticism we often have. So instead of telling the story about how you messed up or you should have known better, you end up shifting to, I was doing the best that I could with the tools that I had. Stop and notice the difference. How does that feel in your body? The first one of I messed up probably brings in tension and shame. The second one, hopefully, will bring in a breath of relief. Now, the next lens we can look at is the learner's lens. So this will sound like instead of saying things like, that was a disaster, you might say, well, this taught me something important. Your nervous system relaxes when the story includes meaning or growth, because meaning makes difficulty more tolerable. Remember, I think it was Nietzsche who said, "He who has a why to live can bear almost anyhow." Meaning makes things tolerable. Now, the next lens is the future self lens. This is one of my favorite lenses. Instead of asking, "Why did this happen to me?" you can ask, "What would my wiser, more healed, my safer self say about this?" Or you can even ask, "What advice would I give my child if they went through this?" This lens, it kind of allows you to borrow perspective from that future, wiser, older self. And it's really from a place where you can't access when you are in a survival state. And then the last lens is the protective lens. This last one actually honors all our survival strategies. So instead of saying something like, "I was so stupid back then," you shift to, "I was just trying to protect myself the only way I knew how." So this lens validates the wisdom that your younger self had while freeing you up to make new choices now. Now, I want to be clear. Of course, these lenses don't erase the reality of what happened, but they can help expand it. And they can help you see sort of the whole landscape instead of just one very narrow snapshot. So, an example I can give you. Think about somebody going through a breakup. And through the survival lens, the story could be, "I was abandoned, I'm always going to be alone, I'm not lovable." But if we shift and we use something like the learner's lens, the story can be something like, "I learned what safety feels like and what I never want to settle for again. I learned what I want and I learned what I don't want." So which story do you think your nervous system feels safer carrying forward? Now, let's talk about the second thing you can do. Let's talk about language. The words you use in your story, they're not actually just words. They are instructions to your nervous system. So think about two versions of the same thought. If you're saying something like, "I always screw up," versus, "I used to struggle with this, but I'm learning." So my guess is one of those sentences makes you clench up a bit more. And the other one hopefully will make you feel a little bit more relaxed. Maybe you notice your shoulders drop. Maybe you notice a little bit less pressure, because your body hears and is listening for the difference in the words. Your body knows the difference. So you can think that certain words, you can consider them, they're kind of like concrete blocks. They lock you into a feeling of permanence. So words like always, never, everyone, no one, can't, impossible, should. When your body hears those words, it can feel very trapped, like there's no exit. There is this sense of permanence. And when your nervous system feels trapped, it braces. But then there are other words that are kind of like you're opening up and expanding. So words like yet, becoming, practicing, growing, choosing. These words basically say we're still in motion, we're still learning, this is still unfolding, and that alone can soothe your nervous system. So pay attention to the absolutes that you may be using in your self-talk. Every time you hear yourself say something like, "I always," or "I never," pause and ask yourself, is that really true? Or is there kind of wiggle room and space to soften it? Can I swap it out for sometimes, or in the past, or I'm practicing? So, for example, if you hear yourself say something like, "I'm terrible with conflict," that sentence kind of locks you into a role of somebody who's terrible with conflict. But when you shift to, "I'm practicing staying calmer during conflict," you'll likely notice that your whole body is going to respond differently. You're not going to pretend you're suddenly great at conflict, but you can give yourself permission to be in the process. So that one word of practicing can create enough safety in your body to start trying new behaviors. Okay, The third thing is an important one for sure. I did a whole podcast episode about it, episode 121, the 3 stories you tell, because you literally tell different stories depending on the state of your nervous system. So the third thing is looking at the state of your nervous system. When you are dysregulated in hyper, hypo, team hypo, or even in a freeze state, which is that combination of hyper and hypo, your stories are going to follow and they can get pretty extreme. So, for example, in team hyper, you can end up catastrophizing. This will ruin everything. There is no hope. There is a flavor or an energy that can feel dangerous and aggressive and just plain stressed out. Or there can be this desperation with intensity or a sense of defensiveness. Now, in the hypo state, you can really sink into hopelessness, like nothing will ever work out, nothing will ever change. So there's lots of kind of victim talk here. There's a lot of sadness. We'll never get it right. And then if you combine those two, you can actually get a freeze story or a lack of anything. You kind of go blank. I don't even know who I am anymore. But when you're regulated, when you're in that zone of resilience, in that zone of safety, your stories are much more nuanced. This is hard, and I'm handling it. I have tools to support me and help me through this. I'm human, and I'm just learning. Now, one thing to remember and to consider is it's very hard to kind of re-story or create a new story that you want from that protective survival mode. Because again, story follows state. So you really need to first regulate and then rewrite or restory. And that's why I always go back to the nervous system tools. And you know, my favorite tool is the safety sequence, which I have a whole video about that you can go and you can watch. But you can also introduce some safety and regulation by doing some other things. For example, you can do box breathing. Inhale for 4, hold for 4, exhale for 4, hold for 4. Or you could do the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 grounding technique, where you look at 5 things that you see, 4 things that you feel, 3 things that you hear, 2 things that you smell, 1 thing that you can touch. These are different ways to help you get in that present moment, which invites in regulation. Or you could use movement. You could shake, you could stretch, you can move the body to try to reset the system. So an example I'll give you is if you're having an argument with somebody, maybe it's your partner, in a hyper aroused state, when you're in team hyper, you may have a story like they don't care about me, this is doomed, there's some aggression. But if you pause and breathe and regulate, the story can shift to something like, we're both really stressed out right now. I need a break before I can respond with clarity. It's the same fight, same partner, but once your body is safe, you can tell a completely different story. So overall, there are 3 things you can do to help shift your story. Remember last week we talked about building awareness of your story. Stories have served us. We created them for a brilliant reason. We're not bad or wrong or less worthy because of our stories, but we can change them if we want to, not to gain worthiness, but because often we want to expand and grow, and our old stories may be limiting us. So to do that, the 3 things, you're going to notice your lens. You're going to ask yourself, am I looking through a lens of compassion or learning or future self or protection? Then do like an audit of your language. Catch those always and never statements and experiment with softer, more open and expansive words. And then check your nervous system state. If you are dysregulated, don't try to rewrite your story at that point. Do the safety sequence. Take a breath, move your body, then revisit the story once you're back in your zone of resilience. And remember, this isn't about pretending that hard things didn't happen. It's really about giving your nervous system new options. Every time you try on a new lens, a new word, or a new state, you're literally creating new neural pathways in your brain. That's what neuroplasticity is all about. You're teaching your brain and your body to tell a different story. All right, next week, we're going to talk about what it actually looks like to release an old story and live into a new one, including one of my favorite frameworks that I created called the grace process. I hope you found this helpful, and I'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to the Building Resilience podcast. If you're interested in learning a little bit more about managing stress, building resilience, and leading a more purposeful life, then make sure we're connected on Instagram and Facebook at Leah Davidson Life Coaching. You can also subscribe to my weekly newsletter at www.leahdavidsonlifecoaching.com/newsletter. Looking forward to connecting.